So it says which quadratic function has a graph that passes through the points 4, 0, 0, -24, and -2, 0. So we have these quadratic functions and they're looking for the one that goes through each of these 3 points. So one thing you could do, let me just say this to start off with, you could just take these points, so this is an x and a y value, and you could plug them in and see if they make the function true. So if they make the function true, then it goes through that point. So you could take each of these 3 points and just plug them in to each of these equations till you find the function that is true for all 3 of those points. Okay, I'm going to try to show you a little bit simpler way to do this. And so one thing I notice when I look at these points is that they all have a 0 in them, right? So I have 4, 0, and I have -2, 0, and this is an x value, and this is a y value. So when the y value is 0, what you're finding are the x-intercepts. So this is saying that it has an x-intercept of -2 and -4. And if I look at the other point, so let me just write this. So that's the x-intercept. That's where the graph crosses the x-axis. And then if I look at the other point they gave us, which was 0, -24, 0, -24, again, that's an x and a y. And this is giving me the y-intercept. And so what I can do, now don't forget that f of x is the same thing as y, okay? So this f of x here, don't be confused by function notation. That's simply nothing more than y. So let's start with this x-intercept here. So the x-intercept occurs where y equals 0. So you plug in 0 for y and then you solve for x. So if I do that, so let's plug in 0 for y. So I have 0 equals, and then x minus 4 times x plus 2. And what I'm looking for are the x values that make this true. So if either of these terms, if this was 0, then 0 times this would be 0. If this was 0, then same thing, it'd be equal to 0. So what are the x values that would make this term equal to 0? And what are the x values that would make this term equal to 0? And so hopefully you can see that if the first term, if x was -4, then that would make the first term 0. And then, sorry, that's a +4 because that's x minus 4, so it'd be +4. Let me erase the negative sign, right? Because 4 minus 4 would give you 0. And then for the other one, it would be -2. So if you plug these points in for x, it would make these 0. Okay, so this is saying it has an x-intercept of 4 and -2. And if I look over here, that matches up. Okay, so that's correct. Now let's check the y-intercept. So for the y-intercept, I should have done that part in a different color, but for the y-intercept, I'm going to plug in the y value, which is -24. And then for the x value, I'm going to plug in 0. And so I would have 0 minus 4 times 0 plus 2. And so 0 minus 4 would be -4, 0 plus 2 would be 2, and I add those together and you get -8. So what you end up with is -25 equals -8, and that's not true. That doesn't work. So this one doesn't have a y-intercept of -24. So it's not A. So then let's do the same thing for B. So for B, I'm going to check the x-intercept first. So I'm going to plug in 0 for y. So 0 equals x plus 4 times x minus 2. And so the x-intercepts for this would be -4 and +2, which is not correct So I don't even need to check the y-intercept. So I know it's not B. And then if I go to C, so let's do the same thing. I'll plug in 0 for y. So I have 0 equals 3 times x minus 4 times x plus 2. And again, same thing. If either of these two terms in parentheses are 0, the whole thing will be 0. So that means my x-intercepts are 4 and negative 2. And that's correct. Again, what I'm looking at is these values that we got initially that they gave us. These were the x-intercepts. So 4 and negative 2 is correct. So now we just need to check the y-intercept. And so for the y-intercept, I plug in negative 24 for f of x, so negative 24. And then I'm going to plug in 0 for x, so I have 3 times x minus 0. Whoops, sorry. It'd be 0 minus 4. Plug it in 0 for x. My fault. So 0 minus 4 times 0 plus 2. So 0 minus 4. So I'll work this out a little further. So negative 24 equals 3 times negative 4. And then 0 plus 2 is 2. And so if I multiply 3 times negative 4, that's negative 12, times 2 is negative 24. So I end up with negative 24 equals negative 24, which is true. So that one matches both the x-intercept and the y-intercept. And so that would be the answer. And I'm not going to test D, but knowing what we know, if we look at D, you can see that the x-intercepts are not correct for D. D has an x-intercept of negative 4 and positive 2, which is backwards. So the answer is C. Again, remember, I did this, I thought in a shorter way, but you could have just taken these points. So plug in 4 for x, 0 for y, and see if it comes out true, and then do the same thing for the other 2 points, and all 3 points would have to work, and the only one that's going to work for is C. All right, so keep up the good work, keep working hard, and you will master the math.